All right, well, I've knocked off that extra edge of jade that was sticking out from underneath the labradorite there on the top, and gone ahead and made it a little more symmetrical. It's not completely symmetrical yet, but when I move on to my Nova tips, which are diamond impregnated resin tips, they're a little bit softer, a little more forgiving, and they still eat away product material. So you don't want to just make your shape all perfect with your rough bits, because then when you go down with your Nova points, you're still going to be removing material. So you want to pull up and stop before you get too deep, because when you're working with stones like this that refract color in this way, you never know, like if you remove more of that surface, you might end up losing color play. And also you'll just end up with a smaller stone, because you are going to be removing with the Nova points. But the thing that I like about the Nova points is you can see, maybe it'll be easier to see if it's drier a little bit, but you can see some points on the stone that aren't completely rounded, almost like a faceting on the ends here, and that can be smoothed out with the Nova point better than it can be with the rough bits that I've been using. So I am going to move on to the 280 grit Nova point and finish shaping this thing completely, and then move on down through my bits. I'll explain that as I go. So these are the Nova points I was telling you about. Starting with black 280, you can see this is the most used one. It's super worn down, followed by 600 brown, 1200 gray, and 3000 pink. This is pretty much your pre-polish, the pink. Some stones are hard enough that you can actually just polish it with the pink, but I usually like to hit it with a felt tip and cerium oxide afterwards. I'll show that when I get to that point, but just wanted to show you these in case you bought some and can't remember what the grits are. Black, brown, gray, pink, that is your method right there. Start with the black, go to the brown, go to the gray, go to the pink. Now, just because your Nova tips are going to be less aggressive than the metal tips, that doesn't mean that you can just go gnarly, heavy, pressing hard, staying in one spot for a long time. No matter what bit you're using, when you're using a handheld tool with a bit on it, instead of a cab wheel that you can just roll up against a flat surface and get a uniform shape, you need to keep this thing moving at all times. And it's helpful to go in one direction, because when you go back and forth like this, you end up stopping in one spot and going back. That one spot's going to get deeper than anywhere else, and you're going to have a wavy pattern. So in the beginning of this series, I told you how you want to go slowly over the surface, very lightly, to where just the surface of the bit is just barely skimming the top. What that's going to do is any high points like that, the bit's going to come over and slowly knock that down, knock that down, knock that down, knock that down, until you have a uniform surface. Once you have a uniform surface, then you want to keep going lightly just to get that uniform surface completely continuous. Because you can see on this stone, in the light reflection, how it's uniform. There's no distortion of the light. That means that this is a nice, smooth piece of stone, right? And then let's see another, for instance, this piece. So you see that light, how it kind of, there's a variance in the shape of the light because it's not a completely polished surface. I haven't cut the stone all the way yet. I just polished it so I could see the color better. I also kind of got it like this a little bit. I only polished it a little bit. But I have to have a better example than that. Maybe this tiger's eye. Okay, so this tiger's eye wasn't really all that important to me. I just wanted to see what it looked like. It was a rough piece. So I cut it up and haven't polished it yet. But you see that light playing across the top, how it's not uniform? How the shape of the light reflection actually alters as it goes across the stone. That means that it's not a level surface. That means it's not uniformly curved. So again, you just want to go nice and light, nice and smooth, and just keep going over your piece until it's a nice uniform shape. Alright, so it's looking pretty good. Just from the 280 grit, it's already looking pretty good. But you can see in this reflection zone right here that there's some dimples. Now most of that is just because labradorite is fairly porous. But I'm hoping that I can knock that down a little bit more and get it completely smooth on top, because the smoother the better. Like I said previously in the series, the shine comes from the surface being all the same exact level, so that when it reflects light, it refracts it all in the same, reflects it all in the same pattern, which makes a good, nice, shiny, polished stone. There's a good view of the pitting and the surface of the labradorite. When you look at the jade, you don't see that quite as much because the jade is more solid. But yeah. Oh, by the way, this is kind of a tutorial video, but being that I'm not all that experienced, I'm just sharing what I have learned, and most of what I have learned came from two different YouTube channels. One is called Roy's Rocks, which is a guy named Roy Lehman from Australia who hand carves all of his opal. He doesn't use any capping machines or anything. He uses tools like mine. He uses a flex shaft rotary tool, and he explains the crap out of everything in so much detail. And that's where I've learned most of my stuff. And that's just because I found him first. Another guy is called Phil Mills from the Opal Mills. The Opal Mills is his YouTube channel. And he does everything. He does everything from mining the opal to cutting and polishing the opal to setting the opal in jewelry to treating matrix opal. I just noticed that there's a spot I still need to work on right there. It's a little uneven. But yeah, these two guys, Roy's Rocks and the Opal Mills, they have taught me so very much about how to properly cut stones and set them and whatnot. Well, the setting is just Phil, the cutting is just Roy, but Phil does both. But those guys both have excellent channels. I learn something new every single time I watch one of their videos that they put on there, so I recommend going and checking them out.